Well, hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Proverbs 31 Ministries podcast, where we share biblical truth for any girl in any season. I'm your host, Meredith Brock, and I am here with my co-host, Kaylee Olson.
Hey, Meredith. Today, we're about to hear a really great conversation with our president, Lysa TerKeurst, and Pastor Craig Groeschel about habits, which I know is fun for us to talk about. So, for fun, let's lighten the mood here. Since we're all friends, Meredith, we've known each other for a long time. I think we should share a weird habit that we have as we transition. Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, you go first.
You know me as a very efficient person. And so I don't think that this is necessarily a habit, but one thing that I try to do is I try to weave efficiency into everything. And sometimes I'll combine weird tasks. Like I will take my toothbrush into the shower so that I can knock out like two birds with one stone, or like my nighttime routine. I try to cut down on as many steps as possible or do them collectively so that I can get in the bed faster, but I'm not doing one thing at a time.
You know, Kaylee, as a person who respects, who's somebody, I respect productivity, and right now you're speaking my love language. I would say a weird habit that I have is pretty much every single night.
Okay.
I tell myself, I'm going to have I'm not going to eat a lot of tortilla chips before bed. But so I'm not going to get a bowl and I'm not going to get a bag of tortilla chips. I'm just going to have a handful of tortilla chips. Guys, I'm
pretty sure that's actually a serving size though. Yeah, it's just like 5.
But like I can like double up in both hands how many tortilla chips. But I just want everybody to know that I have a habit of eating tortilla chips every single night before I go to bed. And I go through this inner dialogue every night before I go to bed that I'm like, I'm just going to have a handful of tortilla chips. And most of the time it ends up being like 2 and 3 handfuls of tortilla chips. But I gotta have my tortilla chips before I go to sleep, y'all.
I know you'll have a great day in the office, and it's because you had your
tortilla chips before I went to bed.
Is it just plain tortilla chips, or is it like Doritos?
No, I have a very specific kind of tortilla chips. They are just plain tortilla chips, but they are the thin and crispy restaurant-style ones.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what they put on those, but it's like crack for me.
It's very good. It's like
extra salt. And they're super crispy. I would like to have a handful right now.
I really like the direction that this conversation is going. And afterwards, we'll go to the grocery store and pick you up some tortilla chips.
Yes,
well, we're talking about habits. And this was fun. But I know that some habits are like hard to break. Mm-hmm. And we've all got things that we do that maybe just aren't super beneficial for us. Well, if you're finding yourself in that situation right now, I've got good news for you, because I know I've tried, and it's just not possible to change. And if you thought that same thing, you're about to hear a conversation between our president, Lysa, and Pastor Craig Groeschel of Life Church in Oklahoma City and host of the well-known Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. You're going to hear Lysa ask Craig all of the questions we know that you want answers on in relation to habits, like what to do when you're stuck, how to prioritize what's most important, and how to make change that's simple rather than overwhelming.
And in the meantime, if you're wanting to go ahead and grab some resources on creating habits that last, be sure to check out Craig's book, The Power to Change. It's linked in the show notes. And if you want an easy way to stay accountable to a new habit you want to create after you listen to this episode, then we've linked a free resource from Proverbs 31 in the show notes titled 31 Days to Form a New Habit. We can't wait for you to listen to Lysa and Craig's conversation, so let's turn it over to the experts.
Hi, Pastor Craig. I am so excited about our topic today because I have big questions, and I know you always have amazing answers. So welcome, Pastor Craig Groeschel.
Lysa, it's great to be back with you. I always enjoy our time together.
Well, I do too. And we do get to spend some fun time together doing ministry and other things. I love your wife, Amy, and your family. And so I know you on a personal level as well. And so it's just terrific to have you here today. And it's so terrific to get to spend some time talking about your new book, The Power to Change.
Thank you.
And I'm going to actually hold the book up. I wish we had a mirror copy so that everyone could see a mirrored copy. If you're joining by just listening today, it's a awesome orange cover that has big, bold white letters, The Power to Change. by Craig Groeschel, who is, by the way, New York Times bestselling author, and like I said before, pastor of Life Church. So let's just jump right in. What motivated you to write this book?
So interesting enough, Lysa, the theme of this book, I think, is maybe perhaps the most core theme to my life. It's really all about choosing discipline. And I wanted to write a book on discipline, but the publisher said, nobody wants to hear about discipline. So so we wrote about the power to change, which really talks about how do we create the right habits and the right disciplines in our life to bring about the right outcomes. I think a lot of times we get so focused on the outcome that this is, what I want to do or who I want to become, that we don't know how to get there and get really frustrated. So the book is about how to create the right inputs in our lives that will bring about the God-honoring outcomes.
Because I know for me, I'm just going to make a couple of confessions on this podcast, if that's okay.
Confess away, please.
Okay. I like the thought of change, but when it comes down to breaking it down into the daily disciplines and new habits that I need to form to create lasting change, sometimes I get highly unmotivated. So highly motivated, want the change, but unmotivated in creating what's necessary to bring about the change. So what do you say to people who say, I want change, but I just don't know that I can do this?
Well, I think that's very common for all of us, that it's really, really easy to want a specific outcome or to make a change in our life. But the work to get there can be very, very intimidating. And so what I would say, first of all, is that change is possible, that all things are possible with God, that the power of the gospel, the heart of it is it changes lives. So change is possible. And then what I would do is really try to start encouraging people on some really, really small, simple changes that a lot of times, Lysa, people they might look at your life and say, I want what Lysa had. Probably had to do all these big, big things. And you would actually say, no, any kind of God-honoring success you have is a result of small, consistent actions that bring about the big results. I would say it's the small things that no one sees that bring about the big results that everybody wants. And so I would break it down, and we can talk about really how to do it, to break down your life into the small, consistent habits that will bring about the big changes. So it is possible, and it doesn't have to be big, big changes. It can be small changes over time that bring about really big differences in your life.
Yeah. So I resonate so much with what you're saying, because when someone ever says to me like, oh, how does it feel to experience such overnight success?
Right. Yeah. And
I'm like, yes, overnight success, 30 years in the making.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been doing this a long time, and I know you have as well. And so many times what I say to people, especially when they ask me questions about ministry, is I say it was a daily act of obedience. Like I realized early on, my job is to be obedient to God with what's in front of me. And God's job is everything else. And I think that answer is very true to what I experience. And there were also many decisions that I made along the way that were really wise decisions. So what would you say when someone's wanting to create a change in their life? Are there some decisions that they need to make first in order to start the process of healthier habits and new disciplines?
100%. So here's what tends to happen. People will say like, I want to be more organized, or I want to be healthier, or I want to be a better parent or be more present, or whatever. And they start with the kind of exterior or outside goal. What I would say, Lysa, is we have to start with the core reasons why we behave the way that we do. And if you think about it, if we were to ask kind of your podcast community, why do you do what you do? There would be several kind of what I call secondary reasons. People do what they do to be liked, or to feel responsible, or maybe to be God honoring. But when you take away all the secondary reasons, the primary reason that people do what they do is this: you do what you do because of what you think of you. If you think of yourself as organized, you tend to behave like someone who's organized. If you think of yourself as someone who procrastinates, you become someone that procrastinates. So identity drives behavior. So what I would do is I would start with not the behavior, how do I want to behave, but I would start with the identity and say, who do you want to become? Who is it that you want to be? And we want to start with a God-honoring identity. And then when we start to change what we think of ourselves, if you want to change what you do, change what you think of you, right? We're going to not see ourselves as someone else says we are, or even as our own negative voices say that we are, but we're going to try to see ourselves as God says we are, or how he sees us, and change our identity. Once we start to see ourselves as that, we can name, this is who I want to become. This is the type of person that I want to be. Then we're going to ask, what kind of behaviors does that kind of person have? And we're going to look at what kind of habit do we want to start to become that type of person? What kind of habit do we want to stop? But it all starts with identity. Who do you want to be? Let's talk about who before do. And once we identify the who, the do will start to overflow more naturally.
I like that so much because I think I sometimes, here's another confession by me, I think sometimes I put limitations on myself that I don't even realize affect my behavior more than I've given it credit for.
We all do that. I think everybody does that. It's our own inner insecurities will often rob us from any kind of real potential.
Yeah. So here are a couple examples in my life. I'll start with something super small, but actually it creates a lot of drama in my life, a lot. But I just constantly lose my cell phone. And I mean, it's a problem. Like people in my life know, they say, whenever we leave somewhere, that my people know, like, ask Lysa if she has her phone.
How funny.
Because chances are I will have forgotten it. And so I think I've even bought into this thing. It's like, yeah, I'm just the person who always loses her cell phone. But I wonder how much of it is that my thinking has been so limited because I say that, that it hasn't even occurred to me to make that a change or to do different habits in my life to create a change. I'm just navigating around the dysfunction of losing my phone all the time, Yeah. And so that's a small example, but then there's much bigger examples in our life where we put limitations on ourselves and we label ourselves, this is just how I am. Like I like the one where you said, if someone says they want to be a more organized person, well, I've heard people say before, well, I'm just not that organized. Right. And it's like, yeah, you may not be right now, but what could happen if you change that thinking? So what would you say to someone who just feels stuck?
Well, I'd say, again, that's fairly common. And back to your illustration, I think, number one, we can probably find several solutions to help you find your cell phone. And we might even work on that together because I think that's a solvable problem. But I think that everybody feels stuck at one time or another. We feel like this is just the way that I am, and I can't change. So if we start to identify what is it that, what type of a person do we want to become? Who do we want to be? And then we ask ourselves this, if based on who I want to become, what's one habit that I need to create? Or what's one behavior that I want to start? And what's so amazing is, like with your cell phone, like let's just say you created a checklist before you left somewhere, you're going to say every time, do I have my cell phone? Because you're the type of person that never loses her cell phone. And if you create that one behavior that moves in that direction, then what happens is, as James Clear says, you start creating like mini votes, little small votes toward the type of person that you want to become. And your actions start to confirm your identity. I'm the type of person that never leaves her cell phone. And so before you leave, you say, do I have my cell phone? You get it. And you say, oh, I'm the type of person that never does it. So what we're going to do is, if we feel stuck and change is way too far off in the distance, we're going to take really small, really intentional steps in that direction. And over time, it can be a big change. I'll give you a personal example. If sometimes people say, like, hey, Craig, you're a very disciplined person. And I would say, like, naturally, I am not at all. I like to eat junk food. I like to sleep in. I like to take shortcuts.
Really?
1,000%. I love donuts, chocolate cake, cinnamon rolls, sweet tea, chips. The list goes on and on and on. So by nature, I don't have good disciplines, but I decided years ago to do a really small thing. And in the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, he talks about keystone habits, little habits that create cascading positive habits. I decided, it's kind of funny, but just to start flossing, because I hate flossing. And by doing one thing a day that I don't like, it tells myself, okay, I'm choosing to be disciplined. I'm choosing to do something that I don't want to do. And that one little discipline creates all sorts of other positive disciplines in my life. The way I joke about it, at least, is I'll say, because I floss, I say I'm disciplined, and that helps me to eat better, go to bed early, get up early, do my YouVersion Bible plan, get into the office early, be productive, come home early, see Amy, and have an amazing life. Versus if I didn't, I would think, okay, I'm not disciplined. I don't eat good. I stay up too late. I sleep in. I don't do my Bible study. I get in late. I'm a jerk all day. I'm running late coming home. I get pulled over by a police officer. I don't want to get a ticket, so I try to outrun him. I end up in jail, all because I didn't floss. So obviously a little bit of an exaggeration, but not too far from the truth, that one small behavior reinforces the positive identity that I'm disciplined, and that starts creating other positive traits. So that's why I say, don't be discouraged. You can do something really, really small in the right direction based on who I want to become. What one new habit do I need to start? And you'll be shocked at how quickly you can change and never lose your cell phone again.
I know that would be a full-on miracle. that would be truly miraculous. It's so bad. I just went on a bus trip, like a bus tour across the United States, and the number of times I left my cell phone, lost my cell phone, or watched the Uber driving down the highway because I was tracking my cell phone and realized I'm on the bus and there goes my cell phone. Yeah. So, and it seems like something so small and so silly, but the drama that it creates is enormous. Yes. So I like the example you just gave about flossing your teeth. And if you play it all the way out, it's helping you not get arrested. So that's, that may seem dramatic, but I do think it's true. Do you think that some of us are just not thinking about playing it all the way out when we're thinking about daily habits, which seems hard to create? But if we do take the time and play it all the way out, with those habits, this can happen. Without those habits, this can happen. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's there's a great book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And basically he shows how, really small behaviors in any direction create massive change. And there was one example in there, and I hate to talk about weight because weight can be sensitive. We really are concerned about health, but he shows in the book how 125 calories a day, one way or the other, creates a real compound effect. And that could be, what is that? A glass of wine, or maybe a half of a candy bar or whatever, something really small. And if someone adds just 125 calories over a 27-month period with no other changes, that person gains 33 and a half pounds. 33 and a half pounds with just 125 extra calories a day. And the flip side is, if someone eliminates that very thing and decreases and nothing else changes, 125 calories, it becomes a 33 and a half pound drop. And so there's literally a 67-pound swing based on something as small as a portion of a candy bar a day. And that's, to me, is I don't want to harp on weight or calories, but use that as an example of, think about what would be different if you prayed with your spouse every day. How could that create changes in your marriage? Or think about if you spent less than you make every day and invested just $10 a week into a long-term investment. And so if we can make really, really small changes over time, they can create a massive difference. Like, for example, I've been married for 31 years to Amy. If someone look on and say, you guys have a really good marriage, why is it? I could probably list 4 or 5 very small things that we've worked to consistently have in our marriage that over time create something special. And without those 4 or 5 things, we could be in an entirely different place. It's not the big few things you do, it's the small, consistent, right things you do over time that bring about really, really special results.
I love that. So tell me, what are those 4 or 5 things, or just name 4 or 5 things that you and Amy consistently do that you think are really helping to improve your relationship and keep it growing?
So, and again, what I'm going to tell you, like, these things are true. I promise you. And they all seem really small. One of the things that we do is we pray together, and we don't pray long. But here's the thing. If we pray together, do you think that we can fight and pray together? The answer is no. We have to work through issues to pray together. Do you think that it would be easy to have a secret sin going on and have intimate spiritual time together? The answer is no. And so it forces a real God-honoring, God-submitted heart of purity in order to pray together. So something that small creates something really, really big. It creates spiritual intimacy, and it helps us work through things. Another little bitty thing is that we do walks together. And this wouldn't necessarily be important to someone else, but to us, with 6 children and a lot of moving parts, it's about the only guarded time we have to really process things. And so Amy loves face-to-face time. I have a more difficult time having long, intimate face-to-face talks, but when we're side by side doing something out in nature, I get real open. And so we work through things that way. We have had a date night for years and years and years, and just we had one season where we thought our marriage is good, we don't need a date night, and suddenly our marriage wasn't as good anymore. And then I think just we're pastors, but we're not just pastors, we're Christians. We worship together, meaning we're in a small group and we're in the church together. And I'd say if you take those little things, and they wouldn't be the same for everybody, but those little things keep us spiritually humble, spiritually repentant, spiritually intimate, relationally close, prioritizing each other, not being child-centered in our marriage, having our relationship grounded on Christ, working through issues. The presence of those 4 or 5 things create a really good marriage. The absence of those things could create an entirely different scenario.
That's really good. I love those suggestions because none of them feel massive.
No.
You know, if you say to someone, you need to work on your relationship, that feels so massive. It's like, well, where do we even start? There's communication, there's conflict, there's so many different aspects of working on a relationship. But what I hear you saying is just work on it daily.
Yes.
Pick some of those small things that are good daily habits that you can implement, and then over time, change will happen.
Yes.
I really like actually the weight example because I had bought into the lie when I hit 50. And I just thought, well, after 50, it's just not really possible to lose weight or, get healthy. There were changes happening just with hormones and everything in my body. And so I kind of bought this lie of just settling in and just accepting the weight. And obviously my primary goal is to be healthy, right. But I knew that I had gained weight and that I wasn't feeling healthy. I just wasn't. And so I decided to go after portion control. Now, I've done a ton of different diets over my life, lots of different eating plans, lots of different exercise plans. And, I think eating plans and exercise plans, I think they're good. They're really good. But what I discovered is portion control for me was the key to having that compounding effect that you were talking about, and just reducing a certain number of calories a day and giving up something that really wasn't necessary and wasn't healthy for me. It made a massive difference. And in 1 year's time, I lost over 50 pounds. Wow. So I went from kind of believing that this is where I'm at and I'll be here forever to making a change, which was a very daily change. And it didn't seem that massive, but it really did help in a tremendously massive way. And I now have so much more energy. I'm better equipped to run at the pace that my ministry life requires. And I just in general feel better about myself. Now, that's not to say I'm not standing in front of the mirror, body shaming myself, and I'm not shaming someone else. Right. But for me, that mathematical equation of doing something small every single day, it did add up to a big, massive change.
That's so powerful. And I would guess, Lysa, that not only did it give you more energy to do the ministry, but I'm guessing that it had compounding positive effects in other areas of your life. For example, number one is you proved to yourself that you could do something that you didn't think you could do. And so that creates confidence. And there may be some other area of your life, I'm guessing, that you didn't think you could accomplish it. And that momentum in the area of your physical health gave you the confidence to attack something else. And and that's what we're looking for. Whatever age we are, whatever relationship we're in, we want to do the right things, the right small things at that season to be the best version of who God created us to be. And if it's in your 50s, if it's in your 70s, if it's in your 20s, whatever it is we're going to do the right things to become who it is that God wants us to become. And I applaud you for that. And I know that that's not just something that impacted your health, but I promise you, your ministry is better because of it. Your relationships are better because of it. You've got momentum in other areas of life because you found a God-honoring discipline in one area.
Yeah, I agree with that. So are there some changes that you recommend people start with? Like, if they're coming to you and saying, okay, Pastor Craig, I want to be a healthier person, or I want to be a happier person. Are there some basic changes you see kind of across the board that people need to consider first? Because I think a lot of us could change a lot of things about ourselves.
Sure.
So to prevent overwhelm happening, what would you say are good places to start?
So that's a great question. I've got a lot to say about it. I'll try to keep it short. The first thing I would say is this, that a lot of times we're tending to think about all change as practical. What I would do is I would encourage people to think of change as spiritual, that we're not just after behavior modification. What we're after is spiritual transformation. Because if we simply change a behavior without changing our heart, the behavior tends to come back, right? We see that all the time.
Right.
We do good for 30 days and then we fall back into the old patterns. So I would say, let's start as often as we can, not with behavior modification, but saying we truly want spiritual transformation, that God's going to change our heart. Once we start there, then what I would do is I would try to help people say, okay, who do you want to become? Remember, we're starting with who before do. We're starting with identity before behavior. Then I would move to real specific questions, and everybody's answer would be different. But I would ask you, based on who you want to become, what one habit do you need to start? Or based on who you want to become, what one habit do you need to break? And the reason I say one is because most people try to change 5 things, and nobody can change 5 things at once, but anybody can change one thing. So if you change one thing, you're creating positive momentum. Then I teach on a very different mindset that I believe is really rooted in Scripture. The Apostle Paul said, train yourself for godliness. He said, I train my body to do what it should. Most people, when they're hoping to change, they're just trying to change. And I would say to people, stop trying to change. If you're trying, what does it mean to be trying? Trying is kind of like a half-hearted attempt where you know you might not succeed and you're already giving yourself an excuse to fail. I'm trying, but I may not make it. What we're doing is we're not trying, but we're in training. Totally different mindset. If you're in training, you have a game plan, you're going to show up. You may not always have a great training day, and you may even skip a day, or you may even blow your training session. But when you're training, you're actually becoming more of what you already are. I'm training to get better at what I am. I'm not trying to become something, but I'm in training. So, Lysa, you are the type of person that never loses her cell phone. and what does a person like that do? I don't know, but there's one thing that type of person does, or one thing they don't do, and you're going to name what that is. And then you're not trying to not lose your cell phone. You're in training. Every day you get up, you got a plan. Before you leave anywhere, do I have my cell phone, or whatever it is? Or there's probably some technology that can solve that problem immediately for you if you get the device that tracks it, but that would be way too easy. But we have our identity. We know one thing we want to start or one thing we want to stop, and we're not trying, we're in training, and God is spiritually transforming our heart, and it changes possible. Whatever it is that you think you can't change, with God's help, with His power, you can change.
I like that so much because I would imagine when someone's trying to make a change in their life and that requires them to have a different mindset and a different daily habits, then I think other people could sometimes be resistant to that because it may affect them.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like if someone says they want to get healthier and then their spouse is frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
like, wait, no, we go out and eat,
Right.
pizza every Thursday night. And now you're saying you want to go get, grilled chicken salads.
Mm-hmm.
And the spouse may be like, no, this is too complicated. But I like, instead of saying I'm trying to do this, I'm in training to do this. And I think that could help other people even have a different mindset about the changes that we're making that may affect them as well.
Right. That's a good point. And they can be more supportive. And that's a whole nother side point. But the people that we're around matter so much. And if we're around all, the majority of the people we're around have really different habits, what would be dangerous to us. We might want to love them, but not spend as much time with them. We might need to redefine the relationships. Obviously, if you're married, you don't just redefine that one because you are married. But sometimes, if spouses are going in different ways, if we can help our spouse see this is why we're going this way, then he or she can be more supportive rather than antagonistic toward it. And a lot of times, what will happen is when one spouse makes a positive change and does it right, the other one will come along as well. And then you'll see two people moving in the same direction. And that can get really special because you become a support for each other rather than an opposition toward that goal.
I love that. Okay, 2 last questions. Yes. One, what are some of the most important daily habits that you've developed to invest wisely in your 6 kids that have now multiplied? Because so many of them are married. Now you have grandkids. Same with me.
Yes. So with my 6 kids, here's some, it's a really big question. A couple of things it's more like a mindset. One thing is I study how they connect. There's 6 of them and they all connect in a different way. Katie, my oldest, she'll be real intimate and open in the written word. Mandy likes to talk, but there's only certain times of the day she likes to talk. Anna likes to talk about what's going on in her world, and I have to know what's going on in her world. Sam, he'll talk anytime, anywhere with him. Stephen, I have to like play catch with him or do some kind of side-by-side action for a long period of time before he opens up, then he won't stop. Joy, it's always going to be in her moment, in her time. And so what I do is with 6 kids, I know how they connect, and I very intentionally look for opportunities to connect with them in those ways. Then what I do is I created midway through my parenting a rule that I try to live by. And that is when they ask me to do something, which a lot of times I'll go a long time and none of them will ask me to do anything. But if they ask me, can you do something or do you want to do something? If it's all humanly possible, I'm going to drop everything I can and engage in that moment. Obviously, you may not do that when they're 3 years old, but when they get older, you're talking with teenagers and such, I want to be completely available when they initiate to try to meet that moment. Because if I don't, those moments come and they go. The biggest goal with them is to lead with grace, and always communicate truth. In a lot of Christians' homes, sometimes it's more truth than grace, and truth without grace tends to lead to rebellion. Grace without truth tends to lead to license. So what I want to do is I want to keep the conversation open, do everything I can to have them talking, be available to them, and then always lead with grace. And then support grace with truth. And I'm super thankful, I can't take credit for it at all, but that 6 of them are actively serving Jesus in the church. It's by the grace of God and the help of a good church, good community, and a lot of answered prayers that they're on the right track. And I'm super thankful for that. That doesn't tend to happen naturally. It takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of grace, right?
I think there's so much power in consistency because, when you talk about a topic as big as parenting or a topic as big as marriage, it could be easy to say, well, I do 15 things. And it's like, but can you consistently do 15 things, with 6 kids? Not really. But I love that you've boiled it down to what you have determined are 2 really important things. And I absolutely love your suggestion. My mantra in parenting was keep them talking.
Yes.
Just keep them talking. Because, sometimes people are raised and it said, where we say, don't talk back to me, or because I said so. And I think that there is a definite good part of that in terms of we want to teach our kids to be respectful. But I wanted to have respectful kids who at the same time wanted to keep the conversation going. And so my big thing was keep them talking, keep them talking. And you know what I had to do? Like I had to train my facial expressions to not have a reaction that would shut the conversation down. So I trained my face to just be like, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Help me understand. Inside, I may be freaking out. Like, don't you dare think that way, But I think keep them talking. It's kind of similar to what you said.
I think that's brilliant. Yes.
So I love that. Okay. As we wrap up, is there anything that you haven't shared about the book that you'd want to share, or what is your favorite part of the book?
I would say my favorite part of the book is at the end where we just talk about that God's part in it, that a lot of times we really, really focus on, I have to do this and this is going to be hard and I'm not going to be able to do it. But the reality is that God's power, His grace is absolutely and completely with you. And in whatever area right now you feel like you can't change, that's an area where you're weak. And the amazing thing is that God's strength is absolutely available and is made perfect in your weakness. And I know I'm kind of joking about the phone, but I'm really not, because I know if you lose your phone on a trip, it is a big, big, big deal. And so I'm dead serious. I'd almost want to talk to you about this off camera and solve this once and for all, that you're Lysa TerKeurst, you're the type of person that doesn't lose her phone. And because you're that type of person, what one new habit do you need to create, or what one thing do you need to change? And let's just come up with whatever that is. And then you're not trying to be this kind of person, but you're in training to be this. And then the reality is God's going to meet you where you are in this weakness, and it'll become a strength. And like, I literally believe you could have, like, I've gone 2 years and never lost my phone, because that's the type of person you are, that your ministry role is too important. Your impact in this world is too significant to be stopped by something as small as a lost phone. So
I agree. I need you to hold me accountable.
We all need to hold you accountable. This is a solvable problem for Lysa TerKeurst with all that you have going on. And just for fun, if you can give me now, like, what one thing do you need to do, or what do you need to stop? Can you give me one thing? Let's just start with one thing, just for fun.
Okay, I think what I need to do regarding the cell phone is I need to, when I put it down, I need to say out loud, I am putting my phone on my dresser.
Okay, there you go.
Or if I get in an Uber, I am putting my phone in my purse. And I think if I say it out loud, it'll clue my brain to engage, because I think what happens is my brain is thinking of 15 other different things. And so my cell phone just becomes something that I'll just set it here and I'm not even paying attention. And that's a big reason why I'm losing it.
And I got my private pilot's license last year, and right now I'm training for my instrument rating, and I'm almost finished with it. And we say everything out loud, every checklist, everything that we're doing, we say out loud, because it brings to the front of your consciousness what you're doing. And what happens is we catch ourselves making mistakes or forgetting something by saying things out loud. That's brilliant. That's part of your life now. Like, that's one habit that you need to create. When you do that, that's going to reinforce your identity, that you're the type of person that doesn't lose her phone, and you're going to eliminate a lot of stress. You're not trying to do that. You're in training, and God's going to meet you in it. That truly, and this is, does God really care about something that small? He actually does, because that creates big drama in your life that's unnecessary, that's going to slow you down from creating a bigger impact. And so He's going to meet you in that. I would just declare right now to the Lysa TerKeurst podcast community that we're going places. You got the power to change and creating the habits that matter most in your life. And so I am going to, as your friend, and partner in cell phone identification. Check back up with you, and we're gonna crush this one.
That is great. And all the people that do life with me said amen for sure.
Let's do it.
Well, as we wrap up, thank you for that, by the way. I do think it does seem like a small thing, but it's not a small thing.
Promise me you'll do that. Just promise me you'll do that. That one little thing.
I will.
You watch.
I
Here
will.
we go.
I will. Okay. Let me share it with everyone one more time. The Power to Change, why I love this book. And it's because sometimes when I'm reading a book that is more business oriented or more personal development oriented, sometimes I gravitate toward the popular books that address this from a psychological standpoint or, a business standpoint or whatever. And then I have to choose, okay, do I want to read a Christian book or do I want to read a development book? But I love the fact that we get it all with you. You're an incredible leader and you are solid in your faith.
Thank you.
And whether you're running a household, whether you are in charge of a committee, whether you are just wanting to improve yourself, and certainly if you are running an organization, I recommend The Power to Change. And I love the subtitle too, Mastering the Habits That Matter Most. I think it's a crucial book for all of us to read. Let's make this the year that we make some of those changes that we all have said we wanted to make, but we just haven't activated those changes yet. So, The Power to Change, Pastor Craig Groeschel, thank you. Amazing conversation today and good challenge. So, I receive your challenge.
Lysa, thanks so much. And I'm cheering you on. Congratulations on the progress in your health. And I just love having a good friend that never loses her phone.
And I love being the person now who never loses her phone.
Thanks for having me on.
So now I am taking my phone and I'm putting it in my pocket because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start making sure that I verbalize what I'm doing. Pastor Craig, thank you so much.
Much love, Lysa.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Meredith, that was a great conversation. I love it when they just talk and I can listen and get all the nuggets of wisdom. But I must admit something to the listeners here. Lysa talked about losing her phone all the time, which you're laughing because we both know.
We've had this experience with her.
That was like the one change that Lysa wanted to make. And it is a pretty extensive investment to like lose a phone and have to keep replacing it. But, now that I'm a mom, I do get it. So I don't judge a person who loses their phone all the time because my mind's in a million places. But I do want to dig into that discussion a little bit here. And so Lysa at the end said, I'm a person who doesn't lose my phone. I don't lose my phone. And I thought that was really powerful because Craig said, you do what you do because of what you believe about you. And that's so interesting to me because we are creatures of habit, but a lot of the habit isn't necessarily just in the action, it's in our mindset too. And so for me, at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about I'm an efficient person. I like to combine tasks, and that was like really fun, but I do like to be efficient, but sometimes I see all the things that I have to get done and I'll be like, I can't do it. Or I'll start one thing and move on to the next. And so what I have to believe about myself and something I've been telling myself lately is, Kaylee, you are a focused person. You can do this. And when I believe that about myself and I create those parameters around my schedule and block off that time and really hone in, I'm amazed at what I can do. But if I don't believe that about myself, I'm going to chase all the squirrels and I'm never going to feel like I'm moving the needle. But whenever I believe it, it's just crazy how that mindset shift can impact what I do in a day.
Absolutely.
What about you?
I think for specifically, I'll speak to the role that I play here at Proverbs 31. As CEO, I find myself in a lot of situations where there is a tremendous amount of pressure placed on me to make a decision or figure something out. There's high risk involved where there's employees that if I make a decision, it's going to affect them personally and professionally. And I think in this new season of my life, on some days, will tell myself, I can't handle all this pressure.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to figure this out. I haven't gone to school. There's I don't know, is there a school for CEOs? Did I miss it? And so I have started implementing this habit, and my husband and I will actually send each other text messages to remind each other. But I will tell myself, I am great under pressure.
Yeah.
In fact, I do better under pressure. It makes me think clearer It helps me move with efficiency and confidence. So I am great under pressure. And so that is one of the things that I am changing the way that I think in this season.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And so listeners, I don't know what that is for you, but if you were to tell yourself a new thing to believe about you that would change the habits that you're doing, I think that that's worth thinking on and spending a little bit of time after this podcast kind of processing with yourself. But this was such a powerful and practical conversation. And if you're ready to learn more about creating habits that lead to change that lasts from the master himself, Craig Groeschel, then grab his book, The Power to Change, using the link in our show notes below.
And don't forget to grab the free resource we linked for you in the show notes as well, titled 31 Days to Form a New Habit. All right, friends, that's all we have for you today. As always, at Proverbs 31 Ministries, we believe when you know the truth and live the truth, it changes everything.